In this regard, I am about to tackle the PCOL agents, the pharmacological agents that are used to alter the blood clotting process. Now, sa tibuok lesson nato sa coagulation, I will be always mentioning these two terms. Okay? So, as early as now, please let us all be clarified ha, ani nga mga terms, kaya ako ni silang ma-mention. Please take note, bleeding. Okay? Bleeding, okay, I will always be mentioning the term bleeding. Whenever you encounter this word along our discussion, I am always referring to the term hemorrhage. Okay? Hemorrhage. Ayan. Ayan. Okay, so kapag bleeding, I'm referring to hemorrhage as well. First, uh, Bisaya pa karang pagdugo, no? Tagal pagdurugo. Okay? Then also in this regard, I will also be mentioning the word clotting. Okay, so be familiar also with the term with the word clotting. Kapag naman sinabing clotting, I am referring to the term thrombosis. Okay, thrombosis. Okay, so again, bleeding, hemorrhage, clotting, thrombosis. Kapag naman thrombosis, there is already formation of clot, no? Clotting. So there is formation of clot, there is formation of thrombus. Okay, clot or thrombus. Ayan. Okay? So synonymous siya ha to thrombosis, clotting, thrombosis. Okay? So karon pa lang again, let's be cleared with these terms kay magamot natin ni siya numerous times sa atong topic on coagulation disorder. Now, I have decided to divide our discussion into two parts. Okay, so as being labeled, first we will discuss the physiological activity of the body called hemostasis. Okay, so that's the first part, and that is my goal for this afternoon, to finish all about the physiological activity of the body, hemostasis. Now, when we say hemostasis, this is simply the maintenance of blood clot formation. Okay, this means maintenance of blood clot formation in our body. Okay, again ha, this is a physiology siya, no? Physiology siya ng body that involves blood clot formation. Okay? So for this part sa atong discussion, we will learn the importance ng hemostasis sa katawan, ano yung posibleng mga implications kapag may abnormalities, mga adverse, no, nga events sa hemostasis process. Okay, then after that, we will proceed with drugs. Okay, we will proceed with drugs. In pharmacology, drugs for coagulation disorder are usually classified into three groups. Okay, so these are the following. We have antithrombotics, next we have thrombolytics, and then the prothrombotics. Okay, so we will be discussing these three after the physiology on hemostasis. So, kumbaga, ito yung magiging flow or the outline of our discussion for this topic. Okay, so first up again, we will discuss the process called hemostasis. Okay, so as we recall, hemostasis again is the maintenance of blood clot formation. The normal ha, yung normal mechanism ng body on blood clot formation. Okay, now, please bear in mind that we have different triggers. We have different stimuli para ma-provoke, ma-induce ang hemostasis sa katawan. Okay, and these are the following stimulus, the following triggers, no, of clot formation. So number one is endothelial injury. Then second, we have blood stasis. And then finally, presence of foreign material inside our body. So we will be discussing this individually, starting with endothelial injury. Okay, so start tayo sa first trigger. Okay, how does it trigger our body to cause clot formation? So take note class na kapag may injury no, sa tissue o may sugat, kapag injured ang endothelium, okay, that triggers blood clot formation or hemostasis. Now, ang question karon, what is an endothelium? Ano ba yung endothelium? Okay, para mas masabtan, okay, discuss na ko briefly briefly ano yung endothelium para inyong ma-appreciate what is endothelial injury. Now, class, ang endothelium, sulat ko endothelium, okay, that is a layer, okay, layer yan ng blood vessel. Okay, that is a layer of blood vessel. Isa siyang layer ng ugat. Okay, layer siya ng ugat. In fact, this is considered the innermost layer of blood vessel. Take note the innermost layer of blood vessel. Okay, so for example, in the given figure, let's have yellow lugar. For example sa figure shown on the right, we have here the normal, normal blood vessel. And as you all can see, kani akong gina-highlight nga color yellow. Okay, kana akong gina-highlight nga color yellow. Suppose that is an endothelium. Okay, so yan yung endothelium. And as you all observed, since ang endothelium is the innermost layer ng blood vessel, it is the part of the vessel that has direct contact sa blood, no? Kay innermost man siya nga layer, so siya ang may direct contact with the blood. Okay? So karon, nagkakaroon daw ng hemostasis kapag injure, no? Kapag injure ang endothelium. Now, when we say injure ang endothelium, ang tendency, merong butas, may sira yung parte ng ugat. Okay? And that will serve a way or an opportunity for the blood to leak, no, to leak out or lumabas. 'Di ba? Kaya na-injured man, so potential good, no, nga manggawas ang dugo. Kaya nga kung masamad ta na bleeding. Okay, kana buslot man ang vessel. Now, ang consequence, dahil dito sa endothelial injury, 'di ba, lalabas yung dugo resulting to blood loss, no, resulting to blood loss. And that situation, syempre yung bleeding, that is fatal. No? That situation, that is fatal. That's why good thing sa atong body natay normal mechanism to counteract blood loss, no? To prevent blood loss. Okay? And that is via hemostasis, no? Via formation of blood clot. Okay? Kaya nga, ang endothelial injury, okay, is one of the reasons why blood clot formation has to occur. Okay? Kapag may endothelial injury, automatic, no? Matic, ang atong normal mechanism is hemostasis. Matic, may clot formation. Okay? Now, let us proceed to blood stasis naman. Okay? So, number 2, blood stasis. Basically, kapag sinabi nating stasis, di ba, stasis, ibig sabihin stationary. Okay, stationary. Okay, again, it means stationary. So, when there is stationary blood, this will also trigger blood clot formation. And ang common, no, common nga situation, ang common situation on blood stasis is among patients with atrial fibrillation. Okay? Susulat nyo, atrial fibrillation. Okay, so again, blood stasis or stationary blood, this is often observed among patients with atrial fibrillation. That's why usually kanang mga case study, kapag ang patient may atrial fibrillation, usually he or she is given also anticoagulants, no, drugs that would counteract coagulation process. Okay, kasi nga with blood stasis, nati-trigger yung clot formation. Okay, so that's for blood stasis. It also trigger a clot formation. So we will talk more about drugs, okay, pag second part na sa ato ang topic. Okay, and also presence of foreign material. Number 3, presence of foreign material inside our body. Usually, di ba na atay mga certain procedures, surgical procedures that necessitate mag-implantation of foreign material sa inside our body. For example, sa mga pasyente nga ga-undergo og angioplasty. Okay? Yeah, angioplasty. Okay, nga procedure. Okay? Or any surgical repair, no? Surgical repair of the blood vessel. Okay? Ayan. So, usually manggod during angioplasty, gina-implant na what we call stent. Okay? Na gina-implant during aniha nga surgical repair sa blood vessel, na gina-implant na stent, okay, sa katawan. Okay? And stent is considered a foreign material, no? That is considered a foreign material. And presence of that stent presence of that foreign material, that could also trigger, no? That could also trigger blood clot formation. Okay? That could cause clotting process to happen. Okay? Kaya nga again, patient ulit nagaga-undergo og surgery na may involvement sa mga foreign material nga implantation, foreign material implantation. They are also given drugs for blood coagulation. Okay? So yan yung take away dyan. Okay, so lahat ng to ay mga triggers, no, mga stimuli of clot formation. Okay, so ang bottom line dere is there is a certain reason good why clot has to be formed inside our body. Okay, so naa siya reason, na ay trigger good. Okay, so dili lang na basta-basta nga na ay formation of clot, na ay reason behind that. Okay, so yan yung mga stimuli. Okay, next. Okay, let us proceed naman on the different events on hemostasis. Okay, remember, sa hemostasis, di ba, the goal is to make a blood clot. Kasi nga, blood clot formation. So, dapat ang goal na ay mabuo nga clot. Okay? Dapat may blood clot formation. Okay? Or to be able to form a clot. Now, there are two major events that would lead to clot formation sa katawan. Okay? Two major events that is involved to clot formation. So, these are number 1 and number 2. So, naay involvement ni sila ha sa formation ng clot mismo. And finally, of course, ang clot nga ma-form sa body, hindi naman yan forever, no? Dili man na siya permanent ang clot. Hindi siya absolutely permanent ba? There will come a time nga dili na siya kailangan. Kasi nga, healed na yung injury. Okay, therefore, it will now be degraded. Okay, kaya number 3, no, yung last would be, it is not involved already sa formation ng clot, but it is all about degradation of the clot. Okay, so right now, let's start with the first event, no, involved sa clot formation, and that is the platelet migration and aggregation. Okay, and after that, we will discuss the second event sa clot formation, activation ng coagulation cascade. Okay, so let's start everybody sa platelet migration and aggregation. Okay, now ang key components or concept, no, concept sa platelet migration and aggregation is that the ones that act sa event na to, or the ones that act during this event, are the platelets. Okay? Kumbaga, yung bida sa first event, mga platelets yung involved. Okay? And what is the other term ng platelets? Diba they are also known as thrombocytes. Okay, thrombocytes. Again, platelets are also known as thrombocytes. Now, in this particular event, sa platelet migration and aggregation, there are three specific steps that occur. Okay, so number one, we have platelet adhesion. Okay, tandaan, adhesion. Kapag adhesion, tandaan lang yung term na pagdikit. No? Pagdikit ng platelet. Okay, sige lang, later you will understand this more. Okay, paano nag-a-adhere ang mga platelets. Okay, and the next is the recruitment and activation. Okay, tandaan dito, pag-invite. Okay, yung sa second step sa platelet migration aggregation, pag-invite. Okay, pag-invite and then pag-aggregation naman, ipon, no? Ipon or pag-iipon ng mga platelets. Okay, ipon, pag-ipon. So again, how we have adhesion of platelets, dikit, activation, pag-invite, and then kapag naman pag-ipon, it's for aggregation. Okay, so kani ato ni silang i-discuss individually, okay, for the first event. So let's start with the first step under platelet migration, aggregation. So again, it's pagdikit ha, adhesion, pagdikit. So start tayo sa first step. We have platelet adhesion. Now sa platelet adhesion, okay, the goal here is to make the platelet adhere, 'di ba? From the word adhesion. So dapat mag-adhere, no? Mag-adhere or yun na nga, dikit, no? Magdikit. Okay? Yung platelets, okay? To a particular site. You know, dapat na ay platelet adhesion, okay, to a particular site. Yan yung goal for the first step. Okay? Now, para mangyari yung platelet adhesion, there are certain receptors that we have to identify. I repeat ha, para magkaroon ng platelet adhesion, for it to occur, you have to know certain receptors involved, okay, sa platelet adhesions. First, we have glycoprotein 1A. Okay, glycoprotein 1A receptor. Now, ang glycoprotein 1A, makita na siya sa platelet mismo. Okay? Ang platelet mismo, okay, yung bida mismo, naara na sa iya ha, no? Ang receptor na what we call glycoprotein 1A receptor. And para saan siya? It is responsible for the binding of the platelet to collagen. So tandaan ha, it is important for the binding of the platelet to collagen. Whereas, kapag naman glycoprotein 1B receptor, okay, also expressed by the platelet, ito naman is responsible to bind sa von Willebrand factor. Okay, so again, glycoprotein 1B receptor ng platelets na makikita sa platelets, iyahang action is to bind to von Willebrand factor. Okay? Now with this, somehow, makapangutan na gyud ta para asa day na sila, no? Unsa ba ang relevance ng platelet adhesion sa mga receptor nga na mention? Okay, para mas masabtan, suppose hatag og scenario ha. Let me draw. Halimbawa, this is a blood vessel. Okay, kana akong gidraw. And as we all realized, sabi, ang innermost layer ng blood vessel is, ano nga ulit yun?
Endothelium.
Okay, very good. Endothelium. So halimbawa, ito. Okay, so innermost endothelium. Okay? And then let's say meron tayong mga blood components, okay, that are freely circulating. Okay? May mga blood components that are freely circulating. And of course, sa mga blood components na to, okay? Sa mga blood components na to, kasama na dyan yung platelets. 'Di ba? Naaman sa blood ang platelets. Okay? So halimbawa kanang mga color green. Okay? Kanang mga Kanang mga color green, yan na yung mga platelets. Okay? Yan ay mga platelets, yung kulay green. Which is parte ng blood. Now, isa sa mga trigger, sabi kanina, isa sa stimuli for clot formation is when there is endothelial injury. Okay? So may sira sa endothelium. Okay? Kumbaga nabutas yung endothelium. Now, kapag nasira ang endothelium, so let's say, ako siyang i-magnify ha. Magnify na to na naanay sira sa, ayan, endothelium. So this is just a magnified blood vessel na may sira ang endothelium. Okay? So let's say, mao ni siya kaninga part. Okay? Kaninga part yung sira. Okay? Yung may gap dyan. Okay? Kana. Ayan. Okay? Now, so I repeat ha. Kaninga part, di man ma-erase. Ako tayo i-erase. Basta ka ng blank space. Ay, sorry. Ayan. Okay, naghang na siya. Ayan. Ayan, okay. So again, yung blank space dyan, that is the endothelial injury. So injury siya. O kapag may part sa endothelium na nasira, syempre, it is not anymore the endothelium that is exposed sa blood. Nasira man siya. No? Nasira yung endothelium. So, dili na ang endothelium kaninga part. The ring up, ayan, etong part na to, okay, kana nga part dira, dili na ang endothelium ang directly exposed to blood. Okay? Unsa na ang ma-expose? Since na-scrape ang endothelial portion, ang mga sub-endothelial or mga mas ilalim pa nga layer sa endothelium ang ma-expose karon no sa blood. Okay? I repeat, yung mga sub-endothelial or mga mas deeper layer ng blood vessel ang makita karon sa blood or mas na ay direct contact sa blood. And unsa day ang mga example sa mga sub-endothelial nga mga components? So isa na doon ay halimbawa, collagen. Okay? Collagen. Okay? Isa yan sa mga deep layer no ng blood vessel. Okay? Kumbaga, yung collagen ngayon na-expose no sa blood. Okay? So kumbaga nakikita na siya kasi nasira yung endothelium. And aside from that, na-expose din yung what we call the von Willebrand factor. Okay? Na-expose din yung Willebrand, ayan, factor. Okay, so na-expose sila kasi nga again, nasira yung top layer nila which is the endothelium. So, dira ra pud nga part. Kaya dira ra man ang may injury. Now, let's say, maghatag kog platelet. Ito ay isang platelet, no? Akong i-magnify. Platelet yan. Okay? Yung mga green. So, nako isa nga gi-magnify. Halimbawa. Okay? So, yung mga kulay green, platelet. Then ito, meron akong minagnify ha nga platelet. By the way, tandaan ha, tandaan muna, normally, naturally, ang platelet, hanggang wala silang nakikitang sira. Example, diri pa na tunong, no? Diri pa nga side na tunong ang platelet. Dili pa na siya ma-activate, no? To form, to act, no? To act. Dili pa. Kung man siya, mananatili pa siyang resting. Kaya wala pa man siya nakita, wala pa siya na-sense nga trigger. No? Wala pa siya na-sense. Kaya endothelium raman yung nakita. Pero kung kuan na siya, ayan, mo tapat na siya dire. Halimbawa, from here, no? Pag flow niya, nitapat siya sa certain portion, okay, na may sira, okay, that will already automatically let the platelet na ma-activate siya to adhere on that portion, to adhere on that site. Okay? So I repeat ha, etong part na to resting. Okay, resting pa yung platelets. As long as ang endothelium pa ang directly contact ng platelet, resting siya na. And when the time comes na matapat siya sa area nga naay injury, okay, or may sira na endothelium, automatic ang platelet naa siya'y ability to adhere, okay, to dikit, okay, to that particular site. Now, karon paano siya nagdidikit? Okay, diha sa injured part. Okay? So, paano? Good thing ang platelets, di ba ga-express siya og receptors? Naatay mga ginaingon nga, platelet membrane receptor. Okay? Such as number 1, we have the glycoprotein 1A. Okay? Wherein ano yung kakayahan ng glycoprotein 1A? Saan siya magbabind? Collagen or von Willebrand factor? It is saan? Okay, very good. It is responsible for binding to collagen. Okay, so kumbaga, sulat ko, dito yung 1A. Okay, yung kulay green, itong part na to, ito yung platelet na natapat sa sira. Para mag-adhere siya dyan sa injured site, it will bind, no? Okay? It will bind to collagen via its receptor, glycoprotein 1A. Okay? And then number 2, we have glycoprotein 1B. No? Glycoprotein, dito naman yung 1B. Glycoprotein 1B. Okay? Which is responsible naman for the binding of platelet to the von Willebrand factor. Okay? So yan yung ibig sabihin ng platelet adhesion. Okay, so taken all together, glycoprotein 1A and glycoprotein 1B, these are the receptors expressed by the platelets. And then responsible sila for binding, for pag-adhere, no, ng platelet to the endothelial injury. Okay? So yan yung importance ng receptors. Okay, ng platelet membrane receptors. Okay, so next. Oh, let me draw once more. Okay, the figure I have shown. Halimbawa, draw ko ulit. Example, ayan. Oh, ayan. So example, ito yung blood vessel. And then we have here kulay green, di ba? Nag-adhere na. Yung kulay green, yung first platelet. Initially, adhered platelet. Meron na. So siya yung unang dumikit. Okay? Now, take note, kapag may unang dumikit or nag-adhere na on that particular site or injured endothelium, other platelets nga freely circulating, dili na sila basta-basta mo-adhere diretso. They will remain resting, they will stay resting. But please, bear in mind na this initially adhered nga platelet, of course, cannot cover the whole injury. Kung siya ra isa, di na niya kaya. No? That's why this initially, kaning akong gilabeled as number 1, this initially adhered platelet, okay, yung platelet number 1, has to invite. Manginvitar siya, no? Mag-invite siya or ask for help. Okay, so mga siyang tabang other platelets para magtulong-tulong sila, no? Tulong-tulong sila to adhere on that part. Okay? So mag-send kibali si platelet number 1 og invitation sa other resting platelets. Okay? So kailangan mangyari therefore ang second step. 'Di ba? At after platelet adhesion, we have platelet activation. So it has to invite, kumbaga, it has to invite other platelets. Okay? Now, so ngayon, para ma-notify or ma-receive ng resting platelet ang invitation, okay, gikan sa platelet number 1, okay, gikan anang platelet number 1, syempre, kailangan magpadala si platelet number 1, di ba, o messenger, okay, para ma-receive pod sa other platelets. Okay? Now, ang tawag natin sa mga messengers na yon, okay, messengers na yon, from platelet 1, okay, are the aggregating substances. Okay, aggregating substances. Again, ang tawag ay aggregating substances, or these messengers are also known as messengers. These are also known as pro-aggregants. Okay, pro-aggregants. Okay, in fact, there are 3 pro-aggregants. And these are adenosine diphosphate, the ADP. We also have the thromboxane. And then we also have serotonin. Okay, so illustrate na ako. Otro ha. Illustrate ko ulit yung ayan, blood vessel. Okay, so you have a blood vessel and then yung kulay green ulit, initially adhered, no? Ito yung platelet number 1, initially adhered nga platelet. And then we have here, these are the other resting nga platelets. So ang gagawin ng initially adhered platelets, it will secrete, no? It will secrete messengers, okay, like the TXA, thromboxane, ADP, serotonin. And kapag na-sense na yan, na-sense na ng mga ito, okay, na-sense na nila yung message no ng platelet 1, that will automatically adhere na rin. Okay? They will then adhere na rin sa mismong site. Okay? So, ayan. So, nga na ang mahitabo. Okay? So, unsa atong realization dire, kung walang lalabas na pro-aggregants, di ba? Walang tutulong kay platelet 1. Okay? Di ba? So, dili na niya kaya man to cover no the problem in the endothelium. So, kailangan din siya mag-secrete of pro-aggregants para tabangan siya. Tulong-tulong sila mag-cover ana nga injury. Okay? So, I hope inyong kaka-imagine. Now, suppose, okay, tulong-tulong na. Okay, nagbayanihan na sila dire. Okay? So, ang ibang platelets, upon receiving the message or invitation from initially adhered platelet, syempre, they will also participate there. Okay? Na-receive man nila, automatic na po na sila mag-participate. Now, ang problem karon is, for instance, ito yung platelet 1. Let me draw again. So, halimbawa, ito yung first platelet. Okay? So, syempre, yung first platelet is the adhered platelet, yung initially adhered platelet. And then, this is platelet number 2 na. Kasama na siya sa mga na-invite. Okay? Now, ang problem karon is, ang struggle is, the moment na nakapag-adhere na yung mga activated platelets, dapat ang clot nga ma-form, ang clot nga ma-form dire is of course well established. No? Diba? This is adhered. This is the adhered. No? Platelet. Ito activated na to. Kaya gi-invite man siya. Gikan sa resting, gi-activate sila ba? Okay? So, ang problema karon, although yes, nagtulong-tulong na sila, pero dapat yung pagtutulungan nila strong, no? Strong ang ilahang bonding, kumbaga ba? Okay? Therefore, para mas stronger ang clot being formed, dapat yung mga platelets, di ba, mag-stick together sila. They must undergo what we call interplatelet binding. Okay, they must undergo interplatelet binding. And para maghitabo ang interplatelet binding, kailangan nila mag-express og certain receptor, and that receptor is called glycoprotein 2B3A. Okay, glycoprotein 2B3A. That's the name of the receptor. And para saan siya? This is responsible for the interplatelet binding. Okay, tandaan lang, this is important for interplatelet binding. Okay, yung glycoprotein 2B3A. And again, it's the platelet, no? Ang platelet ang ga-express, ana. So, na sila yung receptor. Let's say, ako i-draw. Okay? So, you have here, muna yahang glycoprotein 2B3A. Okay na. Okay? Now, when we say interplatelet, it tells us na via this receptor 2B and 3A, ang dalawang platelets, magdidikit sila to one another. And to facilitate interplatelet binding, we need a bridge. No, we need a bridge, and that bridge is what we call fibrinogen. Okay? So, kailangan, syempre, yes, na sila receptor, pero kinsay mag-connect sa ilang receptor to another receptor. Okay? Kumbaga, paano magko-connect si platelet 1 at si platelet 2? Yes, naa sila receptor. Paano nga sila magko-connect? Kailangan ng bridge. And kinsay mag-bridge sa ilahang duha, it's the fibrinogen. Okay, kumbaga, ito si fibrinogen. Okay, siya ang mag-connect, no? Mag-connect sa platelet 1, platelet 2. Okay, so that's the bridge. Okay, kaya nga sabi dito, glycoprotein 2B3A, it binds fibrinogen. Okay, it binds fibrinogen. So suppose this is the fibrinogen. Okay, ito yung kulay purple. Okay, so that is the bridge, the one that will connect the platelets together. So kumbaga, yung fibrinogen, kakapit siya sa 2B and 3A ng dalawang platelet. Ganon din yung mangyayari sa platelet 3, then platelet 4, etc. Okay? So, naman na sila 2B, 3A. Ang mag-connect nila nga bridge would be the fibrinogen. So, ana lang. Okay? Ayan. So, yan yung interplatelet binding already. Okay? And that is already part of the third step. No? Yung aggregation platelet. Aggregation. Okay, so I repeat how when this happens, interplatelet binding, magko-connect na yung platelets. And syempre, kung magko-connect na sila, connect, nag-iipon na yan, di ba? Nagkakaroon na ng pag-ipon ng mga platelets sa affected area. Diyan sa affected area ng blood vessel. Okay? Now, pag sinabing pag-ipon, di ba, that is already, ito lang yung mga aggregating substances. Pag-ipon, that is already aggregation. So, dyan papasok yung third step. Okay, so ito sila lahat, na-discuss na. No, na-discuss naman to. These are, ito ba? Okay, ayan, na-discuss naman yan, ADP. Na-discuss na yan, mga pro-aggregants. Okay. So again, ang last would be platelet aggregation. Okay, platelet aggregation. Ito na yung interplatelet binding. Okay, interplatelet binding. Pag-ipon, no? Pag-ipon. Okay, ng mga platelets sa affected site. Okay, so overall, that is all about platelet migration and aggregation. Ito, basahin niyo lang ha. Basta these are pro-aggregants. Messengers. Okay, messengers. Okay? Sige, atong reviewhon ang tulo ka steps using this illustration. So, kumbaga, summary na to ng platelet migration and aggregation. So, number 1, For instance, itong mga kulay yellow-green, kani akong gi-check. Let's say, ayan, kani sila. This is the endothelial cell, no? Sila yung mga endothelial cell, yung exposed sa blood. Na as observed, etong part na to, ayan, ayang part na yan, di ba, may blank. Okay, obviously, there is endothelial injury. Okay, so may sira ngayon sa endothelium. Kaya exposed ngayon ang subendothelial substances. And what are those? Collagen. Okay, we have there collagen, von Willebrand factor. So na-expose ngayon. Now with this scenario, yung unang platelet na with direct contact sa uh, sa sa mismong area, okay, nga injured, okay, I repeat, yung unang platelet na nakasense, no, ng injury, siya ay mag-a-adhere. So ito yon. Wait, ayan. So this is the first platelet na mag-a-adhere. Okay, mag-a-adhere siya with its glycoprotein 1A sa collagen, iyaha din glycoprotein 1B receptor sa von Willebrand factor. Okay, di ba yan yung platelet adhesion? Ngayon, with this initially adhered platelet, hihingi siya ng tulong from other platelets, resting ng mga platelets. How? Magsisend siya ng mga pro-aggregants. Halimbawa, ADP, thromboxane, serotonin. Okay, and the moment na ma-sense ng mga other, ayan, pag send niya, ma-sense na dayon sa mga other resting platelets, they will be activated. Ngayon, kaya susugod sila sa affected area. However, as mentioned, dili sila basta-basta, di ba, mag-interplate binding. But good thing na ay available bridge. Okay, na ay available bridge in the bloodstream. And that bridge is known as, ayan, the fibrinogen. Okay? And again, ano yung didikitan ng fibrinogen? The glycoprotein 3B, 3A, glycoprotein 3B, 3A of the platelets. Mura na siya akong gidiscuss po kanina. No? So that's what happened during platelet migration and aggregation. Okay? Now for this slide naman, this also summarizes the first event, no? Yung platelet migration and aggregation process. We have here the platelet adhesion, activation, platelet aggregation. Now for this, let us emphasize the end product, no? End product of the first event. Ano ba yung end product ng platelet migration and aggregation? Okay, ang tawag sa product, no? End product. Okay? Ng first event is termed as primary hemostasis. Okay, primary hemostasis. Now, when we say primary hemostasis, this is also known as platelet plug. Okay, this is also known as platelet plug, or tinatawag din siyang white thrombus. Okay, white thrombus. I repeat, the product of platelet migration and aggregation is known as primary hemostasis, also known as platelet plug, white thrombus. Okay, so ano yung important note that you have to keep in mind sa primary hemostasis? Please take note na ang primary hemostasis is an unstable. Okay, it is an unstable clot. Okay? Kumbaga yung na-form na white thrombus or platelet plug, unstable yun. Okay? Ang end product, unstable. Weak. Kumbaga weak. Okay? Yung clot. Okay? Weak yung clot. Prone siya to breakage. No? Prone siya na pwede siyang ma-dissolve. Okay? And yan ay hindi pwede nating i iwalang bahala, no? Dapat ato gina siyang solusyonan. Okay? Kay clot formation is important for normal mechanism, no, to prevent bleeding. Now, ang nahitabo sa primary hemostasis, unstable pa ang clot nga na form. Okay? So, prone siya sa dissolution. Bakit siya prone sa dissolution? Again, that is because the bridge, okay, yung bridge na nabuo para magkumpol-kumpol, mag-ipon-ipon yung mga platelets, that is still weak. Yung fibrinogen ba na na-mention, di ba ito yung bridge na magko-connect sa lahat ng platelets, forming white thrombus. The bridge that connects them are still weak. Okay? So, mahina siya. That's why prone talaga to dissolution. Now, ano ulit tawag sa bridge na yon? Fibrinogen. Okay? Sulat nyo, fibrinogen. Okay? Still weak siya ha. Tandaan sa first event, the fibrinogen, okay, the bridge is still weak. Okay, so ako siyang gina-emphasize nga weak siya dira kay kana nga gap, kana nga problema, okay, nga involved sa first event. Okay, that is being addressed by the second event. Kasi di ba we have two major events sa clot formation. This is the first one, the platelet migration and aggregation. Yung second one, meron pang second. And itong problema sa first, i-address yan ng second event of blood clot formation. So let us proceed now sa second event. Okay? So for the second event of clot formation, this is known as blood coagulation cascade as being stated diba, sa previous nga slide. Okay? Now mind you na ang blood coagulation cascade, okay, the ones that act here are the so-called clotting factors. So somehow you're familiar already, no, with the term. Okay? Clotting factors. So ang involved dire ha, clotting factors. Okay, now, unsa ang ultimate goal ng coagulation cascade? Ang ultimate goal sa coagulation cascade is to strengthen the bridge. Kasi weak yung nabuo sa first event, pag proceed sa second event, address to niya, iyang strengthen ang bridge. Okay, to make the bridge stable, no? To make the bridge stable. Okay, so by stabilizing the bridge, we tend, of course, to strengthen the whole clot na na-form. Now, ang question, paano niya ma-stabilize ang weak bridge into strong one? No? Scientifically speaking, the that goal, no, to stabilize the weak bridge into strong one, that could be achieved by converting fibrinogen. Okay, i-convert nato si fibrinogen into a strong form. And yung activated form ni fibrinogen is what we call fibrin. Okay? So, fibrin. So, yan yung kumbaga goal, no? Para ma-achieve nato ang stable nga clot. Kailangan nato i-convert si fibrinogen into fibrin, the activated form, no, ng bridge. And again, to be able to achieve this, para maging fibrin ang fibrinogen, we need the help of the so-called clotting factors. Okay? Kailangan natin yung mga clotting factors. Okay? Kani unstable na to stable. Okay? Or weak. No, weak forming to stable kasi weak yung fibrinogen. Ayan. Okay, so at this juncture ha, let's focus on the clotting factors naman. So in particular, I am referring to what we call the pro nga clotting factors. Okay? The pro clotting factors. Ayan. Okay? Now, With regards to the clotting factors, there are actually symbols na ito rin ginagamit na symbols to identify or represent the different clotting factors. Okay, in particular, ang symbol na ginagamit are Roman numerals. In fact, there are about 12, no? Natay 12 nga clotting factors, pro-clotting factors inside our body. Again, there are 12. There are 12 clotting factors available in the body and highly regulated, highly structured ang process of activating these clotting factors. Okay? Now with that, please take note, meron tayong dalawang forms ng clotting factors. Okay, natay duha ka forms ng clotting factors. Number one, we have the clotting factors na adverse. No, adverse na clotting factors. And these are termed as zymogen. Okay, zymogen. Ibig sabihin, inactive pa to, no? Inactive. Okay, zymogen. Then, napod tayo clotting factors, okay, that are termed as activated. Okay, or the active, no? Active clotting factors. Okay? So yung 12 na sinasabi ko kanina, 12 clotting factors in particular, initially they are inactive. So diragin sila magsugod. Inactive sila una. And then of course, they are required to be activated para may silbi sila. Okay? Wala sila silbi kung dili sila activated. So kailangan din sila ma-activate yung mga clotting factors. So usually sa symbols na gina-apply to represent clotting factors kapag zymogen kapag zymogen, only Roman numeral. Okay, halimbawa, kapag clotting factor 1, then zymogen form pa siya, only the Roman numeral. Okay, yan yung clotting factor 1 na inactive. Pero kapag naman may letter A, no, may letter A nakatabi, so halimbawa 1A, clotting factor 1, natay clotting factor 2, tapos may katabing letter A sa Roman numeral, that is already activated form na clotting factor. So that's how we write, no? How we write the clotting factors, okay? Using Roman numerals. Kapag active, then inactive. Okay? So again, there are 12. All in all, 12. And they are being numbered from Roman numeral 1 to 13. Okay? Kasi walang clotting factor, it's 6, no? 6. Walang clotting factor 6. So, mo na siya ang label, no? Sa clotting factors. 12 clotting factors labeled as 1 to 13, walang clotting factor 6. Okay? Ayan. So, as stated on, this slide, okay? Sorry. Ayan. So, as stated sa slide na to, ang goal ng coagulation cascade is to activate the clotting factor. Okay? The clotting factor, particularly clotting factor 2A. And clotting factor 2A is also known as thrombin. Okay? Yan yung goal. Kasi yung clotting factor 2A, yan yung requirement para mangyari itong conversion na to. Nakuha? Kailangan yan para ma-convert si fibrinogen to fibrin. Di ba sabi natin kanina, to have a stable clot, kailangan natin i-convert si fibrinogen to fibrin. Paano ba yan naka-convert si fibrinogen-fibrin? Kailangan natin si clotting factor 2A. Okay, so kailangan ma-activate si clotting factor 2A. Kapag may 2A activation, automatic na yan, may fibrin na mabubuo. Okay? Now, ano yung characteristic ngayon ng fibrin? Ano yung characteristic ng fibrin? Okay? Number one, because of the formation of fibrin, it can cause deposition of platelets, and it can glue platelets together. So that's number one. Okay, kasi by gluing platelets together, that makes us conclude na strengthen ngayon yung clot na mabubuo. Okay, so that's the characteristic ng fibrin. Okay, and they can also cause deposition of red blood cells into the platelet plug. Take note ha, the platelet plug, ito yung um, product, no, sa, ito, ayan, product sa first event. Now, kapag paano ba, nag-bind or nag-attract na din, okay, sumama na din yung red blood cells doon sa platelet plug, that will form a red thrombus, no? Kaya yung end product sa second event, end product dito is termed as red thrombus. Okay, kasi may presence na no ng red blood cell. Okay, nakukulayan na ba yung clot? Kasi nga, yun na nga, isang effect ng fibrin is attracting other cells. Example, red blood cell to deposit. Okay, unlike sa platelet plug alone, sa first event, di ba kulay white? Sabi dito, white thrombus. Okay, kasi wala pang RBC dyan na na-attract. Di ba puro platelet lang nandyan? Isa ito yung characteristic ni fibrin. Okay, so yan yung action niya, effect ng fibrin. And that would really stabilize the clot. And also that will make the clot color red. Okay, yan. Okay, so we have different clotting factors. Ito, as I've said earlier, and they're, ayan, okay. So in this table, yan yung mga clotting factors, no? Different clotting factors. And again, they are numbered from Roman numeral 1 to 13. Okay, except 6, no? Walang 6 clotting factors. 6. And of course, I am not requiring you to memorize this all, no? Kahit ako, hindi ko nga memorize yan, no? Meron lang tayong certain clotting factors na dapat malaman that are related to drugs. Okay? So actually, ang related lang sa drugs dito are, ito. You take note of this, yung first 3. Okay, take note their common synonym. Okay, ayan, common synonym nila. Okay, so kumbaga ito yung mga related later on sa names of the drugs kasi actually sa ilaha, no, sa ilaha na derive ang pangalan ng mga drugs. Okay, mga drugs classification. Okay, so ma-discuss nato na again sa drugs na sa second part ng discussion. And ang common synonyms natin naman for clotting factor 1 clotting factor 1 is fibrinogen, which is still inactive, no? Inactive pa yan. Diba? So, ilagay ko in active. Okay? Now, another important clotting factor, yun na nga, is clotting factor 2, which is prothrombin. Okay? Now, once activated yung prothrombin, di ba, you will now have 2A. Kasi this is clotting factor 2. Kapag na-activate siya, naging 2A na yan. And that is already, ayan. Sorry. Nawa na. Okay. Ayan, clotting factor 2A, as mentioned, that is already thrombin. Di ba? So kapag na-activate na yan, okay, ang 1A, okay, will be formed. Okay, kasi 1A is already the fibrin. Nakuha? So ako rin na siyang gibalik. Kaganina, 'di ba? Sabi ang fibrinogen will only be activated into fibrin with the presence of 2A. Ito lang din 'yon, the goal. Basahin niyo lang 'to. Kailangan si 2A para ma-convert si fibrinogen into fibrin. Si 1 into 1A. Okay, this is 1A man. Okay, and this is 1. 2A is thrombin. Okay? So that is the goal of coagulation cascade. And then, take note of tissue thromboplastin. This will be mentioned also later. Okay? Tissue thromboplastin is the common synonym of clotting factor 3. Okay, so ito yung mga clotting factors that you have to remember nga related siya sa drugs. Okay? Now, okay, sa coagulation cascade, important no na inyuhang i-take note ang term nga cascade. Okay, cascade. Kasi when we say cascade, that is a sequence, no? Cascade, sequence siya ng event. Kumbaga, domino effect siya. Okay, one reaction or process has to occur para mangyari yung mga succeeding events. So, cascade, domino effect. Kapag nahitabo ni siya, automatic na din. Sunod-sunod na din. Okay? Now, why do we need to emphasize the word cascade? Take note na ma-achieve lang sa coagulation cascade na event ang outcome na maging fibrin, ang fibrinogen, okay, if all the clotting factors help no with one another. If they help with one another, tsaka lang po ma-activate at the end yung fibrin. Okay? Kasi kapag hindi to sila activated, okay, hindi activated yung mga clotting factor, kahit isa lang, kahit isang clotting factor hindi activated, walang fibrin. Walang fibrin na product. Okay, walang fibrin na mabubuo. So, important yung clotting factors, no? Clotting factors. Sila yung bida dito sa blood coagulation cascade. So, kailangan yun sila ma-activate. Okay, to form fibrin, to form the end product, which is the red thrombus. Okay? So, kahit itry nyo i-search no sa internet, okay? Ay ba sinakulbaan mo ba? Kani nga pathway, mao ra gid ni siya ang illustration kung concept on coagulation cascade inyuhang studyhan. Ing ani nga mga illustration ang manggawas. Okay? So, kung atong lantawan ang illustration, present dito lahat, no? Lahat actually ng clotting factors from 1 to 13. Okay, nga clotting factors present dito sa pathway na to. Kasi nga, they help one another para mabuo, ma-achieve yung ultimate goal na coagulation cascade. Okay, and again, that the ultimate goal is to form fibrin. Diba? To produce fibrin. Okay, so let us discuss this pathway. Okay? Now, para masabtan ni nga pathway, I'll divide it into 3 parts. No? So, divide nato siya, ayan, sorry. 3 parts. So, una, we have, let's say, dere na to i-divide. Ayan. And then, dito nga part. Ayan. So, 3 parts na yan, no? So, una, we have the intrinsic pathway. We also have the extrinsic pathway. And finally, common pathway. So, intrinsic, extrinsic, common pathway. Take note na atay mga designated clotting factors per pathway. Okay, so per pathway na atay mga involved nga clotting factors. So, for instance, in the intrinsic pathway. Okay, sa intrinsic pathway muna. Examples of clotting factors that are assigned, we have here clotting factor 12, no? Clotting factor 12, 11, 9, and 10, and so on and so forth. No, kasali din si 8 dito ha, kasali si 8. Okay, so for extrinsic pathway naman, dalawa yung assigned na clotting factors dito. We have clotting factor, sulat nyo ha, clotting factor 3 ang involved sa extrinsic pathway and clotting factor 7. Again, sa extrinsic pathway, we only have 2 clotting factor. Clotting factor 3 and 7. Ang clotting factor 3, as mentioned sa table kanina, it is also known as thromboplastin. So, sulat natin. Clotting factor 3 is also known as thromboplastin. Now, as we remember no, sa table earlier. Okay, so thromboplastin. Later, ma-mention natin ni siya, no? Along the discussion. So, ang point ko lang dito is, sa slide, no? Sa slide na to, na ay, as a pathways, per pathway, okay, natin mga designated clotting factor. Okay, so be familiar with the clotting factor involved sa intrinsic and then extrinsic. Now, question, ano yung difference ng intrinsic at saka extrinsic pathway? No? So, let's start with extrinsic pathway. Ang sa extrinsic pathway, no, extrinsic pathway, that is caused by an external trauma, no? As the term suggests, no? As the term suggests, it is caused by external trauma. Okay? So kapag may external trauma, that requires the blood to be lost, no? To be removed outside the vascular system. So yan yung extrinsic pathway activation kapag may external trauma. Kapag naman intrinsic, apparently internal naman siya, no? Internal trauma. So at this juncture, i-discuss na to unsay gakahitabo, no, sa blood coagulation. Okay, blood coagulation per pathway. So start sa extrinsic. Okay, start sa extrinsic unsay gakahitabo and ano yung nangyayari. Okay, so for extrinsic pathway, again ha, it is caused by external trauma. Example, nasamad ka. Okay, imong panit, imong tuhod ba ka ha, or siko, any part sa imong external body nasamad. If nasamad ka, yung external part ng skin, okay, that causes the activation of extrinsic pathway. Kasi halimbawa, if this is the tissue, okay, halimbawa, this is the tissue and kapag itong tissue na to ay may skin injury. Okay? Nasugatan ko baga, may tissue injury. That causes release. Okay? That causes release of the clotting factor 3. I repeat. Halimbawa, ito yung tissue, nasugatan ka, may skin injury, external trauma, that will trigger the release of clotting factor 3 or what we call the thromboplastin. Thromboplastin. In other references, this is also known as tissue factor, diba? Tissue factor. Sulat natin, tissue factor. So, ito yun. Okay? Kasi, yun na nga, it is a clotting factor that is coming from the injured. Coming siya from the injured tissue. Kaya, tissue factor. Now, what happens then kapag na-release ang clotting factor 3 from trauma? Isa sa mga role ng tissue factor is that it causes activation of factor 7. Okay? It is also important to activate clotting factor 7. Kaya nga, diba, may nakalagay sa taas, trauma. Kapag may external trauma, ma-release si clotting factor 3. Kaya, kaya niyang i-activate si clotting factor 7. Okay? Just look at the arrow. Okay? So, ayan ang isa sa mga role ni tissue factor, clotting factor 3. Okay? So, kaya nga sabi ko, involved sa extrinsic pathway, clotting factor 3, okay? And also clotting factor 7. Nakuha? Now, ano naman yung importance ng clotting factor 7? Okay? Particularly 7A. Ano yung important ni clotting factor 7A? Tandaan, kapag ang clotting factor, 7A, activated na yan ha, activated. So, meron na siyang action. Okay. Now, kapag may clotting factor 7A already, together with, ayan, clotting factor 3A, that causes activation of the zymogen 10 into 10A. So, important kumbaga si 7A para may 10A. Ma-activate si 10 into 10A. Okay, so yan ang end conversion. So that's the end of extrinsic pathway. Okay, sa extrinsic pathway, solely lang, kung solely sa extrinsic pathway, yan yung ending niya. Okay? Ayan. So, later na nato balikan ha. Balikan nato ng 10A later. Okay, so that's for extrinsic pathway. Now, paano naman ang intrinsic pathway? Okay, so let's proceed to the left side. Sa intrinsic pathway, this is caused by internal. Sabi kanina, internal trauma. For example, there is damaged surface sa endothelium. So, internal siya. Kasi nasa loob man ang endothelium, di ba? Nasa ugat. So, kapag may tissue, may damage sa surface ng endothelium, that is considered internal trauma. Okay, so intrinsic pathway yung activated dyan. Okay, so that triggers activation of several factors. So yun na nga, ito yung ma-activate ang 12, ayan, magiging 12A. Okay, wherein ang 12A kailangan siya, no? Responsible siya para saan? For activation of clotting factor 11. Okay, so cascade siya kumbaga. Kapag na-activate yung isa, kailangan siya para ma-activate yung isa. Na-activate ito, kailangan yan para ma-activate yung isa, and so forth. Cascade siya. Nagtutulungan-tulungan ba yung clotting factor? You no need to memorize this as long as you understand. Okay? I hope you understand the concept, okay, ng intrinsic and extrinsic pathways sa blood coagulation. Okay? So cascade siya. Okay, so yun na nga, ang 11A, it will be utilized para maging 9A, no? Ang 9. And together, take note, sa intrinsic pathway, ang 8A, together with 9A, okay, tama ba? 8A, no? 8A tsaka 9A, oo. They are responsible naman for the activation of 10A. Okay, 10 into 10A. So, diri din sila magtagpo ni extrinsic, no? Diri magtagpo ba si intrinsic, extrinsic kani kapag nabuo na si 10A. That's why we have common pathway, no? Sa baba. Diba? Diba? Kung imong ma-observe, although different ang pathway ni intrinsic, different ang pathway ni extrinsic, magkaiba ang mga na-assigned nga clotting factor, pero there comes a part, no, along the pathway na magko-converge sila. No, nga magtagbo ra gihapon sila, yung dalawang pathway. And that is, nagka-converge sila, no, kapag na-activate, no, upon activating the clotting factor 10 into 10A. Nakuha? So, dira sila magtagbo. Okay, so common product, kumbaga nila, common product nila itong 10A. Okay? Kaya, common pathway will now happen. Okay, pag may 10A na, common pathway will happen. So, proceed tayo ngayon sa common pathway. Okay? So, take note, we have 10A. Okay? Take note ha, 10A together with, nasa baba, together with 5A, that causes activation of the clotting factor 2. Diba? Clotting factor 2 is prothrombin. Kapag na-activate si 2, pangalan niya is thrombin. And I have mentioned earlier na may importance si 2A, okay, sa goal for coagulation cascade. So, kumbaga, because of 10A, okay, together with 5A, because of this, 10A, merong 2A, no? Clotting factor 2A, the thrombin. And finally, because of 2A, ang fibrinogen is now converted to fibrin. No, it is now converted to fibrin, which is the 1A. Okay? And that is, of course, with the help of from fibrin, with the help of clotting factor 13A, ma-further stabilize pagid si fibrin. Ma-further stabilize pagid si fibrin into a cross-linked fibrin clot. Okay, now, knowing this end part of the processes along the common pathway, we can conclude then, di ba, na ang ultimate goal talaga ng coagulation cascade is already achieved. Okay, kung imong lantawon, imong usa-usa ang pathway from intrinsic, extrinsic pagtagbo, then ang last part na form si fibrin, then na-achieve. No? Na-achieve ang goal sa coagulation cascade. Naging fibrin, si fibrinogen. Okay? So, ang realization dere, hindi siya basta-basta na-achieve si fibrin. Hindi siya basta-basta na-achieve. Dapat magtulong-tulong yun ang mga clotting factors, both from intrinsic, extrinsic, and even the common pathway para mas stabilize no, ang clot formation. So, yan yung coagulation cascade. Okay, so please take note ha, kapag walang fibrin, mag-lead ito sa dissolution ng clot. Weak yung clot. Okay, weak yung clot. Kapag walang fibrin, masisira ang clot. Ano yung opposite ng clot formation? Ano yung mangyayari kapag walang clot? Anyone? Kapag walang clot, very good. There will be bleeding. No? Kapag weak yung clot, bleeding might occur. Hemorrhage will occur. So, important talaga no, yung coagulation cascade. Okay, yung blood coagulation. So, overall, we are done no, with the first and second event ng clot formation. Now, yung first and second events, di ba, kapag simultaneous yan nangyari, it will lead to formation of a stable, yun na nga, stable clot. However, you must bear in mind, yun na nga, hindi absolutely permanent yung clot. Hindi siya permanente, no, sa certain site, no, sa tissues natin or sa cells or sa blood vessel. There will come a time nga yung clot will be degraded. Okay? So, dito papasok yung regulation of thrombosis. Okay? Regulation of thrombosis. Regulation, it means if there is total healing already on that injured part sa body, it requires the blood clot to be removed already. Okay, healed naman, no? Healed naman siya. So, yung clot must be removed, must be degraded already. And good thing, we have 3 regulators, no? 3 regulators of thrombus. Okay, nga na form. Okay, or clot nga na form. Okay, so sila yung responsible para ma-remove si clot, preventing clot formation. So number 1, we have plasmin, the plasmin's action, antithrombin 3, and the protein C and S. Okay, so let us discuss them individually. So starting with plasmin. Okay, plasmin, this is an enzyme. No, enzyme siya. It is a protease enzyme. Okay, and this is responsible for the process called fibrinolysis. Okay, importante yung plasmin for the process called fibrinolysis. Ano ba yung fibrinolysis? Fibrinolysis is also known as thrombolysis. Again, fibrinolysis is also known as thrombolysis. Okay, thrombolysis. Now, when we say fibrinolysis or thrombolysis, diba, as the term suggests, when we say lysis, okay, lyse, it means breaking down, di ba? I-break down natin, okay, yung isang material. So, we are breaking here what? Fibrin. Kasi nga, fibrinolysis, we're breaking here the fibrin that was formed. So, sisirain yung bridge na na-form. Okay, and common sense, kapag nasira yung bridge, okay, that will cause deaggregation, no? Deaggregation or disaggregation of the clot. O kapag disaggregation, yung pagkaka dikit-dikit pagkukumpulan ng mga platelets or pagkakaroon ng interplatelet binding, gluing together ng mga clot, mawawala na yon kasi disaggregation na yung mangyayari, no, with fibrinolysis. Okay? Kasi nga na-breakdown na yung fibrin, and that will lead to what? Starts with letter B. Kapag na-break yung fibrin, it leads to
Bleeding, ma'am.
very good bleeding. Okay, it leads to bleeding kasi you remove the clot. So how does it happen? Okay, how does it happen? Usually, ang plasmin, it comes from a zymogen. O, kapag zymogen, active or inactive? Active or inactive?
Inactive, ma'am.
Okay, very good. So, inactive, zymogen. And that zymogen na pinanggagatingan ni plasmin is what we call the plasminogen. Okay, so zymogen yan, ha? Okay, so galing si plasmin sa inactive precursor niya na plasminogen. Okay? And via tissue, the TPA dyan, that is tissue, sulat nyo ha, tissue plasminogen activator. O, yan yung ibig sabihin ng TPA. That causes plasmin formation. Okay, so via TPA, plasminogen will now be converted into plasmin. And plasmin is already the activated form, no? A activated plasmin. So ano yung ginagawa, no, ng plasmin? Take note, plasmin targets both weak, okay, both the weak and the strong bridges. Okay? So that is plasmin, ginadestroy niya ang weak bridge na fibrinogen. Okay, yung ginadestroy. And it also destroys the strong bridge, which is the fibrin. Kaya may degradation products. Okay, so kapag nasira ulit yung bridge, there will be degradation products. Mawawala yung bridges. Kaya magkakaroon ng disaggregation, no? Disaggregation already. Okay, resulting yun na nga, bleeding. Okay, nasira na yung clot kasi. So that is plasmin's action. Okay, so tandaan nyo ha, ang action ng plasmin. Kasi later on, pagdating sa drugs, we also have drugs na available in the market that alters plasmin activation. Natin mga ginatawag na plasmin inhibitor, ganun. So para inyong ma-rationalize, okay, ano yung effect kapag plasmin inhibitor? Okay, or plasmin activator, etc. Okay, now, let us have antithrombin 3. Okay, antithrombin 3 together with, ayan, plasmin C and S. Okay, take note ha, collectively, they are known as anti-clotting factors. Collectively, they are known as anti-clotting factors. Okay? So, kung anti-clotting factors sila, this tells us na they would prevent further clotting formation. Kasi anti, no? Anti, so prevent clot formation. Kasi nga, they are part of regulators sa clot formation. So, they would really prevent clot formation. Diba? So, we have, again, antithrombin 3 and protein C and protein S. Now, ano yung role ng antithrombin 3? Antithrombin 3 is to directly inactivate the different activated clotting factors. Okay? Particularly, the 2A, 9A, 10A, 11A, 12A, 13A. Yan, yung directly gina-inactivate niya. Di ba kapag may letter A, activated yan? So, ang ginagawa ni antithrombin 3, directly gina-inactivate na niya ng mga clotting factors. Whereas, ang protein C and S, tandaan, they are vitamin K dependent nga anti-clotting factors. Take note ha, vitamin K dependent sila nga anti-clotting factors. This only tells us na itong clotting factors na to, for them to be synthesized in the liver, kailangan ng vitamin K. Kaya nga, vitamin K, dependent. Hindi ito mabubuo yung protein C and protein S kung walang vitamin K. Okay? And usually yung clotting factors, they are being formed no sa liver, particularly yung mga vitamin K dependent ng mga clotting factors. Okay? Particularly ang function ng protein C and S, this is to degrade the clotting factors 5A and 8A. I repeat, mo ni ang gina-target ni protein C and S, degrading the clotting factors 5A and 8A. Okay, dirita balik ta ani nga figure para ma-analyze lang nato yung activity ng protein C and protein S. Okay? So kapag, for instance, you have protein C and S, kapag inactivate ang inactivate daw nila. Sabi, inactivate yung 5A. So hanapin natin si 5A. Ayan. Inactivate si 5A. Okay? And also, ano daw, si 8A. O ayan, 8A is inactivated. O do you think na-alter ngayon si coagulation cascade? Yes or no? Ma-alter ba yung coagulation cascade upon inactivation of 5A and 8A? Yes or no? Oh, yes. Okay, very good. Ano yung implication ngayon kapag na-alter si cascade? Remember, di ba, ang mga clotting factors, they help one another para maging useful sila during cascade. So kapag may kahit isang na-alter sa kanila, any dyan sa clotting factor, pigil, no? Pigil ngayon yung coagulation cascade nga buong process talaga. Okay? Therefore, yun na nga, with protein C, okay, and protein S, walang 5A and 8A. We would conclude na wala na rin to, no? Wala si 2A. Wala si thrombin. Okay, so kung wala, again ha, si 5A, 8A, ang tendency walang 2A. And recall, importante si 2A. Diba? Importante si 2A para mabuo yung fibrin. Important si 2A para mabuo si fibrin. So kung altered, walang 2A, wala na ring, 'di ba? Wala na ring 1A. Okay, which is also known as fibrin. O question, weak or strong ang clot being formed kapag may protein C and S? Yes? Okay, very good. It's weak. Kasi at the end, kahit hindi siya directly fibrin yung gina-target niya, but it targets one of the clotting factor which is important no, for the formation of thrombin. Okay, so weak clot will be formed. So dili niya suportado kumbaga ang clot formation. Kaya nga regulator talaga no, regulator talaga yung protein C and S. Regulator meaning anti-clotting factor sila. Same thing applies with thrombin 3, no? Anti-thrombin 3. Okay? Kaya importante no to note these regulators of thrombosis. Okay? So, pwedeng yung goal nila i-degrade si clot or pigilan yung further stabilization ng clot. So, altogether, these are the regulators ng clot formation. Okay? And overall, we are done with physiology of clot formation.